Greetings and salutations. It's Thursday, September 17, and it's been a while since I've gone around the yard, and it's time to do that. I'm going to start the side of the house for a change. Here we are with the ostrich ferns. They did quite well at the start of this year, and then it was quite dry, and they've struggled the last little while. Grapes, happily moving along the fence. They need to be strung up some more. We didn't get any grapes on these, so this may be too dark in here for grapes. But anyhow, it's a nice cover against just a bland fence. Let's go in the backyard. Oh, before we do that, the coleus have done well. It was temperature at the airport last night was -1, so since these still have luscious leaves, that implies no frost here, but we're close. Though having said we're close, it's going to be, I think, +20 another day or so. So the coleuses have done quite well in the pots at the side of this house. This area needs to get a bit more water during the course of a year. I did clean out all the debris that was in here. The plastic that was put down as landscape fabric back in the 1980s. And I pulled out the last 2 stumps that were in here. There used to be mugo pines in here that died many years ago, and I finally, the stumps were rot enough that I pulled them out of the ground. And also in here got rid of all the creeping bellflower. So this area is in quite good shape. Could take a lot more. The mulch that you see is quite deep, and could certainly take more pots or more things, but that's a good start. The rhododendron has done quite well this year, and now we're getting close to putting the chicken wire on, because this is where the rabbit comes to eat things in the winter. So greetings and salutations. Let's go in the backyard. Oh, the tomatoes. It was potential frost last night, so we covered up the tomatoes. So let's just take this off. It's going to be a little bit awkward with one hand here, but we'll get it off. There we go. These have done... Oops, I just do need to move this. I don't want it to get... There we go. I don't want it to potentially get into the water. The rain barrel, or the water barrel, is quite full. So, this has been very successful. And now that I've had 1 year of this, this is the only way I'm going to do tomatoes from now on. The moment you string the tomatoes up, you can see how they grow. The tomatoes coming out from a shoot, a leaf. Let's cut this apart. Let's take this apart here. Another leaf. Another leaf. And then, eventually, another set of tomatoes. Look how many we've got on here. Oops, that just fell off. Broke off. Well, maybe not. I heard it snap there, but it's still there. There's at least 8. It's probably a dozen, probably 16. But if you count that clump and that clump and this clump and this one and what remains on here and on here and on here, and these are just starting up, etc., etc. There's 16, I've counted at least 16 sets of tomatoes, and each set has probably 8. So there's still another 150 tomatoes on here, given that they will ripen. We have another probably 2 weeks before things start to cool off, despite the witnessing of the frost last night. And it's going to be quite warm, so I anticipate these will ripen, and we're in good shape. These are very, very nice, and this method of stringing things up really works, as you'll see when we get to the other tomatoes that I haven't strung up. Oh, I see some frost on the ground here coming up. Here are the grapes. I was going to pick them today, but I think it's from looking at my notes, it's a bit early. So I'll leave that for another week. From reading about when is the time to harvest grapes, is you harvest them when the birds start to eat them, and we're not quite there yet. Now, looking here, this got hit by frost. Yes, oh yes. These are tomatoes on the ground, so that's the end of those. There's also carrots in here. And what I learned is you need to thin carrots. You just can't throw the seeds on the ground. And so we'll do that for next year. In gardening, there's always next year. These are grapevines, and that are overgrown. And none of them produce, I don't believe there are any grapes in here. So this could be, I'm not quite sure why that is. But next spring I will trim this back to the appropriate grape production vines, and we'll see how we do. By the way, here are all my native plant trays. And I need to, I took them to the lake, I took the native plants I had to the lake and planted them out there. So these are the trays that need to be filled up with soil and seeded with the native plant seeds that I need to collect from our front and backyards. I have one set of grasses. Here, let's see what type of grass this is. I'm not sure what to do with this. I was so enamored to plant them. Little blue stem. Oh, no, that's good. These are all little blue stems. And now that I've got them, I'm really not sure where to plant them. I'm not a great fan of grass in a native plant area because I can't distinguish for most of the time between native plant grasses and then the standard Kentucky blue. We had one cucumber this year, and what I've learned from that is don't bother growing cucumbers under this thing. It's too hard to water, you can't weed, it's just not working. So this area next year, I'm going to plant a clematis, Jackmani clematis, and we'll get some color in this part of the garden. Nasturtiums on my hamburgers. They're really at the end. I had some nasturtium leaves earlier this week. Did hamburgers on the barbecue, the new barbecue. And the barbecue on which I added handles. What do you mean the barbecue with no handles? Well, yes, there used to be a handle. And it was, there was one handle, or the one end of the handle, and there was the other. And when you lifted it up in here, and you open it up, then the flames from this burned your arm. I just find it a bizarre design. So what I did is I purchased the same handles as in our old barbecue and drilled holes in the aluminum. Added in a silicone, I'll call it a washer, to protect the heat of the barbecue from the handle. These washers were like this, or similar washers were like this on our old barbecue, and I've done this. And yeah, it works just fine, thank you, and your hands and arms don't get scorched. So, let's continue on. This area was cleaned up earlier this year, and it hasn't grown back, so that's good. So I've had a good shot at cleaning this up. This will be ripe for planting for next year. I've got some compost that I can put down this fall, and also some straw. I bought a bale of straw yesterday. There was a tree that was cut down here that had broken over between snow last winter and wind this summer. And frankly, I don't really notice it. It's a different view of the garden now with this cedar trunk, and it looks quite nice. So my goal today is to remove the seed pods from the common milkweed. There's enough milkweeds in here. I don't need seeds everywhere. Let's go up to here. Well, of course, they moved as soon as I aimed the camera here. Oh, there we go. This feeder has been very successful. The feeder on the left. And it became successful once we took off the tray that was on the bottom. And there used to be a squirrel baffle here that, it's a little bit hard to see. There we go. You can see the squirrels ate it. The squirrels eventually ate the squirrel baffle and then would stand on the tray. So at some point the tray broke as well. We filled this feeder on the left probably every 3 days. We're coming to the end of the year. We should really be cutting back on our seeds a little bit to encourage the summer birds to migrate. So we'll keep going on that. But without the tray works better. And whatever falls to the ground, the birds, another set of birds come and pick those up. Here's all my pails, and my plan had been to do grapes today, but I'm looking at my schedule. I can wait another week or so. Native plants in here. False sunflowers and goldenrod are the main two. Giant hyssop. And there have been, where did it go? Here, if I can point it out. There we go. This is a seed pod for purple prairie clover, and you can see how fine it is. And typically I've weeded this out, not realizing what it was. This is just about ready to be picked for seeds. Those have already gone to seed. Here's some that are better. Here we go. There we go. So here are the tomatoes, the larger tomatoes. Oh, yes, they did survive the frost, but barely. Here are the larger tomatoes, and frankly, with these stakes that fall over at angles, and it's just awkward to see things in here. So these will definitely be replaced by a similar structure with that horizontal pole, and then tomatoes will be strung up for next year. This bed Let me just back up a bit. Oops. Oops, 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 oops. Just tripped over peeking down here. Sorry about that. This bed from to the left of the arch until we get to the peonies. I'm changing that for next year. This is going to become what is called a moon garden. And you plant flowers that are fragrant and typically blossom late in the afternoon or in the evening and at night. And this attracts moths into the area, as opposed to flowers that bloom in the day and attract butterflies. So that's going to be for next spring, a moon garden where the tomatoes are. Let's go through the arch. Oh yes, this took a whack. Yes, that's it for the morning glories. Oh yes. Okay. They've been very good this year. They've really worked well. And the tomatoes, that tomato structure is going to go where these potatoes are, which will be my second task of the day once I've removed the seed pods for the common milkweed. So the tomato structure will go here against the fence behind the tree. This was another area that was cleaned out this year, and I added in chipper shredder material here. It still needs more weeding, just never got quite out to it. So there, some of the creeping bellflower has come back, but on the whole, if you just plug away at this, you're never going to get rid of it. But if you keep on top of it, eventually it gives up. One thing I learned is to do with mulch. For an area that you are planting seasonal crops, you mulch the area with compost. You mulch the soil with compost. For areas where you plan to grow perennials, you can mulch with woody material, which will take several years to rot down. So these examples of wood in here, let's zoom in. This is from my Sunjoe chipper shredder, which works very, very well. Very well. So my goal today is to harvest the potatoes that are here. You can see where I started. We got 2 meals out of potatoes, probably 2 vines just from here. And so there's several more potato vines there, potato plant. And then down this whole row against the fence, these are potatoes as well, all the way to just below the espaliered apple tree. There were 2 apples on this tree this year, and they were absolutely delicious. I now understand how to prune apples, espaliered apples, and so what you see is an espaliered apple that was pruned, that was summer pruned, and that's it. There's no more pruning on that now, and we'll see how we go. And the idea is, oops, let's see if I can find a good one here. These points where you see this several leaves come out of a single point, that's going to be a fruiting spur right there. And that's where we'll have apple blossoms for next year. There's another one right at the end. This one, I can't quite see it. This one has one. This one definitely has one. It's a little bit further back. It's there. So it's these fruiting spurs that in prior years, when I didn't, in prior years, that I just cut off, thinking that, oh no, the side branches should not be as long. And every year, that's the wonderful thing about gardening. Every year you learn something new. So, yeah, espalier is done for the year. These are the potatoes that will be dug out very, very shortly. Hostas are doing well. I was thinking about the canna lilies today, and some of these have just not produced flowers. This is a good example. The leaves are nice, but there was never any flowers. As you can see, there's two types in here, and I don't know what they're called. This bronzy one and then the bright green one. The bright green ones had flowers and did quite well. There we go. But the bronzy ones just hunkered down and plugged along and grew, and they're quite attractive, but their flowers would have been nice as well. Dahlia. It was very dry this year. And once again, the dahlias, perhaps these dahlias really have lost their energy. There have been dahlias, but they were very small. And as you can see, I didn't deadhead. I didn't deadhead, and that's perhaps that's something that should be done more rigorously. Oh, look! This is swamp milkweed, and it's so ripe that it's fallen over. Oh my goodness! These have to be harvested soon before they all turn into this, which are seed pods. See, these are swamp milkweeds, which are fairly well contained. Now, having said that, there's one that I didn't plant. That just grew from seeds. So we have to be a little bit careful. The zucchinis. What an interesting plant. And there's two benefits to the zucchinis. One, here, we'll go to this one to start out with. One is you get the actual zucchini squash. And the trick is to try and get them before they turn into 10-pound monsters. And it's quite hard to do because they hide underneath the leaves. And for example, let's just look back here. So we got 2 or 3. There's a monster. My goodness, there he is. Oh, there he is, right there. And so there's one.